Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Rose's Randoms, and today we are going to be reviewing the book that I just finished reading called The Silent Sister by Diane Chamberlain. So let's just read the back very quickly. Let's read the blurb, and it says, Riley McPherson has spent her entire life believing that her older sister Lisa committed suicide as a teenager. It was a belief that helped shape her own childhood and that of her brother. It shaped her view of her family and their dynamics. It influenced her entire life. Now, more than 20 years later, her father has passed away and she's in Newburgh, North Carolina, cleaning out his house when she finds evidence that what she has always believed is not the truth. Lisa is alive and living under a new identity. But why exactly was she on the run all those years ago? What secrets are being kept now? And what will happen if those secrets are revealed? As Riley works to uncover the truth, her discoveries will put into question everything she thought she knew about her family. Riley must decide what the past means for her present and what she will do with her newfound reality. Well, let's just get into it. So we know the basics. We know that we have a character named Lisa who she thought she had a sister who wasn't alive, and turns out she is alive. And so the book actually starts off with Lisa's father passing away. So her father passed away about a month ago. Her father's name is Frank McPherson. And this is important because we soon find out she has been receiving cards in the mail for a person named Fred Marcus. And so she goes to the post office and the lady informs her that, oh, you received these cards as a warning to shut down the P.O. box if you haven't been paying it. So Riley is like, well, my father's name is not Fred Marcus, his name is Frank McPherson. And so essentially she shuts down the P.O. box, and then she goes home and she feels bad for closing it because she's like, oh, well, you know, this man is not going to be receiving his mail anymore, yada, yada, yada. But then she moves on because she's like, I have other things to worry about, like my father passing away. Now, we also find out that Riley has an older brother and his name is Danny. So Danny has been in the military and he's kind of down on his luck, but he's content where he is. He lives in an RV park that his father actually owned, along with a couple other people that will come into play, such as Tom Kyle and his wife Vernice. Danny also has a friend in the military who is a cop in town. Well, he's not in the military. He's a veteran as well. And he's a cop in town, and he knows Riley, he knows the family. And so Riley, while she loves her brother, they don't really maintain that much contact, but that's only because Danny kind of really only maintains contact with other veterans, and I guess that's because he can relate to them. And so while Riley understands this, it kind of makes her sad because when they were younger, she continuously states throughout the story that they were very close until it reached a certain point. And that certain point can be marked off as to when Lisa supposedly took her own life. However, it kind of states that afterwards is more so when their relationship deteriorated, and maybe it's just the impact of everything. And Riley goes to the person who is to read her the will. Her brother did not want to come with her because he tends to not really care about these things or concern himself with these things. So she goes by herself. And during this will reading, it becomes apparent that Riley doesn't really know a whole lot about her father, or there's a whole lot she thought she knew that she didn't know, like that her father kind of hid from her. For example, she was not aware that her father was also in the military, although she recalls Danny kind of mentioning it to her briefly when they were children. She thought it was a joke, and her father never mentioned it to her himself. Not only that, but he's left certain items to people that is kind of questionable. For example, he had a cigar collection that it was very prized. It was passed down to him from his father, and he continued collecting cigars up until he died. and he leaves this cigar collection to Tom Kyle. And this is suspicious because even the person reading the will, who knew her father, also thinks it's a little bit weird because her father wasn't very close with Tom Kyle, and Riley also knows this, and it also becomes apparent when she goes and she tells her brother that he also finds this odd. Her father has also left a piano to Riley's mother's best friend. So Riley's mother had passed away years prior to her father's passing from cancer. And so she also thinks, oh, like, I haven't seen this woman in so long, like I haven't even thought about her. Why would he leave her this piano? Which she finds a little bit strange, but again, she kind of keeps it pushing because she's like, okay, well, I guess that's my mother's best friend. So now she has to kind of meet with these people to like tell them like, okay, my father left you so and so, and you know, this is what's gonna happen to it. So in addition to that, her father also left her and her brother, you know, the RV park to do with it what they wanted. So anyways, she goes and she meets this lady. She has a daughter named Christine, who we'll meet a little bit later on. So she goes to meet with Jeannie for breakfast, and right off the bat, she doesn't really like Jeannie because of how Jeannie talks to her and how Jeannie it seems as though Jeannie knows that she didn't know much about her father, and she slightly rubs this in her face, but it doesn't seem like it's intentional. But right away still, Riley does not really like her. And during this meeting, we also find out that her father and Jeannie actually became lovers. And Jeannie knows that she doesn't know, so she does break it to her very, very lightly. And she tells, yeah, we were lovers, and you know, I know you might have think it's odd, but it kind of just naturally happened. You know, I was a widow, he was a widow, and we really do think that your mother would have been happy with this. We wouldn't have done it if we didn't think your mother would be happy with this. Now, would her mother have been happy with this? We have no idea. Did I think it was a little bit weird that he didn't tell his children? Of course, possibly because he didn't know how they would feel. Although Riley doesn't really seem to be bothered by the fact that he was in a relationship with her mother's best friend. She just feels more badly that he did not tell her about it. Maybe he was concerned about how Danny would react, because Danny has a temper and Danny doesn't really like certain things. So obviously Riley has to sell her house, Riley and her brother, but again, her brother doesn't really want to be a part of much. And so Jenny tells her that, oh, my daughter Christine, maybe you remember her, she's a realtor and she'll help you with selling the house. So she's like, okay, and she moves on. So she goes to visit Danny to tell him about all of this. And Danny's like, why would he leave his cigars to Tom Kyle? Tom Kyle's not a great person. He's not a nice man. But as she's leaving from visiting her brother, she actually goes to visit Tom Kyle, who she doesn't really remember how he looks. But when she goes to visit him, he immediately recognizes her, and she tells him and his wife that her father left them the cigars, to which they don't really have much of a reaction. And she expected them to have either a look of shock or concern, because maybe they didn't really expect to get anything from her father. But the look on Tom Kyle and Vernice's faces don't really give away much. So she goes into the RV with Tom's wife, Vernice, and she's talking with Riley about life and things of that nature. And then Vernice, out of nowhere, kind of states, oh, you know, you're really lucky that you were adopted into such a nice family. And Riley is like, what? You must have me confused with somebody else. And Bernice is like, no, it's you. But then when she realizes that Riley doesn't really know, or doesn't know at all about any type of adoption, she kind of goes along with Riley, and she's like, oh, well, yeah, you're probably right. I am wrong. I probably am just remembering or confusing you with someone else. And so Riley leaves, but this lingers in her head. At some point, she goes through her father's RV, because he also had an RV, and she finds some VCR tapes. She takes them back to the house, and marked on there, it's her sister, like Lisa's concerts and things like that. I forgot to mention that Lisa was like a child prodigy. So she was a child prodigy playing the violin. She was very good at it. And so a lot of time went into Lisa's playing. And so Danny kind of resents his sister because of this, because over and over he tells Riley that our parents couldn't have cared less about us. Even worse yet, when Riley took her own life, he thinks Riley was very selfish. And so like he thinks that Riley probably took her own life because of pressure from playing the violin and all this pressure on her, and that it was a cowardly way of like trying to get out of something. And then it left their parents very empty and not very much there for himself and Riley. And so he really, really resents his sister for this. He resents Lisa for this. So she finds these VCR tapes and she puts them in, and she hasn't ever really seen Lisa except for a picture where she's on the couch with her parents and Lisa is sitting there. And she watches these tapes, and in these tapes she sees her sister's friend Maddie, whom she was very close to, whom Lisa was very, very close to, and then also a man who appears to be the conductor for the orchestra that she was playing in. And the man points at Lisa to come forward, and she plays her violin. And she notes that the man was smiling and Lisa was smiling, and this seems like it was just they were just having a grand old time. So fast forward to when Jeannie and her daughter Christine come to the house to help Riley clean up everything. At some point, Jeannie goes upstairs because she's like, I'm gonna get started upstairs and you can go through the things down here. And even though Riley doesn't really like her being there, she is grateful for the help. And so Jeannie goes upstairs to start cleaning. And at some point she notices that Jeannie is kind of being purposefully quiet upstairs, like quietly opening drawers and quietly pushing them back in. And so Riley goes up the stairs quietly to see what's going on, and then they bump into each other. And when Jeannie comes back downstairs, she sets whatever she had in her hand onto the kitchen counter, and she goes to the bathroom. And while she's in the bathroom, Riley decides that she's going to look through these things because she's kind of suspicious of what she was doing up there. Because, you know, she didn't really know this woman that much. She didn't even know that her and her father were in a relationship. And so she's like, what could you possibly have been looking for? And so when she opens this box, she finds a bunch of newspapers and newspaper clippings, and they are talking about her sister Lisa. And one of the headlines says something like, suspected teen in murder has taken her own life. And there are several news clippings of this, and then as she goes through them, they mention her sister's name. And so these newspapers are obviously about Lisa. So she is finding out that her sister was suspected of murder. And that's when Jeannie comes out and she tells her some things, and she tells her that she had actually murdered her violin instructor. And the reason that Jeannie says that Lisa did this is because Lisa had apparently had this instructor since she was a child. And then she started taking lessons from a new instructor. And when she came back according to Steve or Steven, who was her instructor for all of her life, She had lost her fire and her violin playing wasn't that great anymore. And Lisa had actually applied to Juilliard, and Stephen had a friend at Juilliard, and he wrote a letter to that friend saying that Lisa has lost her fire, and this caused Lisa to not be able to get into Juilliard, or possibly not. We don't know if she knew that she was gonna get in or not at this point, but she knew that this letter would have repercussions, and so she was upset about this. And so when Stephen came by her house to, I guess, mend fences, Lisa picked up one of her father's guns and she shot and murdered Stephen. So now that Riley has found all of this out, she goes back and she goes to tell her brother this information, to which he is shocked because now he realizes that he has been lied to his entire life. Because as a child, he does remember things like blood being on the floor, cops being called, but his parents lied to him his entire life, saying that, oh, you must be misremembering this, or you're making up silly stories. If you're gonna act out, don't make up such horrible stories. Just to find out that he wasn't a crazy little kid, or he wasn't a crazy teenager, but he was actually remembering these things for real. Like, this actually did happen. And so he's very upset. As we know, he's already got a temper. He already resents Lisa. But now to find out that his parents were covering so much for her makes him even angrier. So at this point in the story, we start switching back and forth between chapters from Lisa to Riley. And so the first chapter, titled Lisa, shows Lisa's father, Riley and Danny's father as well, helping Lisa to escape. And as we know, we already read that Lisa was alive, so this is no shocker. And he helped her to escape because she was going to go to prison, and he didn't want her to go to prison. He didn't want his family to go through all of this, even though they ended up being pretty broken in the end of it all. And so he helps her to escape. And then she's supposed to go to Philadelphia, but it turns out that it's too late for him to be able to drive her all the way to Philadelphia and then to come back for him to have a solid alibi. And so who does he hire to drive her to Philadelphia? Tom Kyle, the man who he left his cigar collection to, and who Riley had found out he'd been paying $500 to every month. And so we realize that as Tom Kyle is taking Lisa to Philadelphia, he's not really for this, but he owes Frank, the father, he owes Frank for some reason, which we will find out about. And he's not really for this because he believes that Lisa should go to jail because she murdered an innocent man. And Lisa realizes in this moment that she really is alone. So at this point, we're about a quarter to a little bit more than that through the book. So if you're liking how this is going so far, please give this video a like, comment down below what you think is gonna happen next, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks guys for watching. Bye.